It takes practice, commitment, vision, goal setting, determination, sharp focus, respect, and discipline. Once you learn it, you can apply it to all aspects of your life. The warrior's mindset prepares you for the largest competition ever, the competition against self. It shows you how to solve all problems at hand, maintain focus and a peaceful state of mind. We live in a competitive society. We live in a society that right now is fighting back and recovering from COVID-19 and all of the other devastating things that has impacted all of our lives. But we will never quit. Quitting is not an option. So thank you for joining in to this Warriors Mindset broadcast so we can always find a solution on how to step up, flip the script, and be a success in our life, regardless of the obstacles that stand in front of us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Willie the Van Johnson's Warriors Mindset. We know that the Warriors Mindset is all about digging down deep, giving your very best, taking the adversity and the obstacles that stand in our way, and they're going to come up, different things that's going to challenge us and make us feel like we can't go on, setbacks, people rejecting you, saying no, COVID-19, you name it, it's going to come your way. But we as warriors learn to dig down deep inside of ourselves, grabbing a hold of our minds, bodies, and spirits, and doing our very best to overcome those obstacles. And in the meantime, we flip them, use them as stepping stones of success. And that's what this show is all about, pumping you up, empowering you, and helping you believe in yourself, because we were all created to be great. We have a special guest that's dear to me. Anybody that came up in the era of martial arts, they remember that one little commercial, man, that says, nobody bothers me and nobody bothers me either. Man, that's like a classic, man. That's like a commercial that will forever go down in history. That commercial probably is just as popular as Bruce Lee's first Kung Fu movie, man. And, this is my brother. I got to make sure I don't cry when I'm talking on this thing, because his dad and all the things that they have done for me to give me hope and dream. It's just such an honor. So we have Mr. Chun Rhee. Mr. Chun Rhee, say hello and talk to us.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Tell us a little bit about you, Mr. Chun Rhee. I mean, I know you, but we have a whole new generation.
I'm a nobody. I'm just Jun Rhee's son. That's all I am. So I was fortunate enough to have a great father, and I'm just riding his coattails. So I'm a little more behind the scenes kind of person. So my dad loved being in the front and leading the charge. I like doing it quietly. So my fame was the commercial, and that was it.
So what is it like being a part of such a legacy? What was it like as a kid? Because Master Rhee exemplifies that whole warrior spirit. What was it like to be amongst that sort of warrior's mindset?
Yeah, it's because he's always, like your father is always just your father. So, you don't really see, your dad in the same light that other people who see him as the grand master. So you wake up every morning, you see him in his office. As a kid, I remember he was always in his office doing something. He was never, like we were just talking about you and I taking naps. You rarely see him taking a nap. He would be up at 6 a.m, working out. Then he'd go straight to his office. He'd be on the phone, on his computer. So that had a lot to do with, kind of the habits that I developed, working as well. I think actually I probably told myself I don't want to work that hard. But yeah, he was just he was a 100% martial artist. He that's all he did. So growing up as a kid up to the day he passed, his mind was on martial arts. Whether it was his business or the philosophy part, there was no deviation from his thought. So he was just 100% go, and he truly loved what he did, and wanted to make a better world, with the philosophy that he created.
And I mean, your dad was a part of the pioneering of martial arts. We talking Bruce Lee and the early beginning. I mean, what was it like? Did you ever get a chance to be amongst like people like Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and those people, man?
Well, I was really young then, so you know, when I was probably 3 or 4, that's when Bruce Lee would come to our house, and you know, when my dad had the tournaments, you know, he would stay at our house, um, and I remember taking a couple pictures with him. Actually, the picture that I had with him, I lost. I'm just a dummy. But
Gotta
yeah,
keep some
he would.
photos, man.
Yeah, I know. You know, so he used to, you know, stay at our house, and they would talk all night. They would train. But I was really young then, so you know, I don't remember. I don't have a lot of you know, memories. You know, as I got older, and this is after Bruce Lee's passing. You know, we went to visit Linda Lee, and that was when Brandon and Shannon were younger. So we, as kids, we ran around.
Right.
And then Brandon visited our school in Falls Church. This is kind of, I think it might have been right before the Crow or after the Crow. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, you see all like, yeah, Chuck Norris. I know that he was very involved, but I was really young then. Actually, I don't think I was born. So I was born in
Right.
'67. So when they had those tournaments, you know, my dad had the tournaments in '68, '69. I was just a little baby.
So how do you stay grounded, you know, when you're a part, because you see in the martial arts, the people become so, I believe martial arts is probably the most egotistical, you know. You know
Yeah,
what I
you
mean?
know,
Go
you know,
ahead, I'm sorry.
well, yeah, you know, they call it masteritis, right? You know, masteritis. Once you get to black belt, everybody thinks you know, they're the chief now. So yeah, you're right. It's tough. A lot of my, you know, I think my humbleness comes from my mom. You
Right.
know, she was really, you know, she takes a lot of credit for my dad's success.
Yeah.
You know how it is when you have a wife that supports you.
Yes.
She did a lot of stuff, you know, and made sure that you know, she supported him. So
Mhm.
she takes a lot of credit.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and so when we talk June Reed Nationals, you brought that tournament back before your dad passed a couple of years ago, and I happened to get my trophy. I still.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hold up. What is that?
Yeah, there you go. So I think that was the first time I met you. I think, you know, really, I remember. So back then, when with the junior nationals, I just started running a school actually. So you know,
Okay.
we can talk about, you know, how I got involved with schools. But so my dad said, you know, I want to have a tournament, and I'm like, okay, well, that shouldn't be too hard. And of course, it was the hardest thing in my life. And you know, my first tournament, you know, I have a AAA NBL event at the Omni Showroom,
Yeah.
and it was an experience. Yeah, I was definitely not prepared. Um, you know, God bless Charlie Lee and his group. His, his team actually ran our registration. It got so crazy that his students at the time, and he had a big tournament,
Right.
and they were all, you know, familiar with the process. And here I am as a promoter. I'm actually judging one of the rings because you know, we had a shortage of judges. It was pretty funny experience, but you learn from that. So
Yeah.
you
It
know.
was
But
pretty.
anyway,
It was pretty big. I had congressmen. It was like historical, right?
yeah. So my dad had, you know, the congressman come, and yeah, you know, he was just the event master. You know, he just loved to make the event a special thing.
Right.
And that was his part of the, you know, the tournament. And he just said, you know, you run everything else. I'm like, okay, you know, I'll try my best. So the first year was definitely tough, but I got a hang of it toward the later years.
Well, you did a good job. I got my grand man out now. I'm
Yeah.
part of history, man. You know.
Yeah, you are. No, I mean, that like I said, you know, I think I saw you a couple times. We didn't really meet until at that tournament, I don't think.
Right.
And watching you, I mean, just, you know, I'm always impressed with you too, and the energy that you have. And when you're on the ring, you just definitely dominated. So it was fun to watch you as well.
Well, thank you. But it goes back to that inspiration, and that ties back like to that TV commercial. I mean, think and we I had an interview yesterday with a great rapper by that comes from Dr. Dre. His name is Knock Turner. I mean, he's
Okay.
like a legendary West Coast rapper, and we talked about art, and we talked about the impact of films and movies and TV. That commercial, I mean, what was it like? And did you even realize the impact of a commercial? Because we all were on TV back then.
Yeah,
Commercials
yeah.
were the biggest thing back then, man.
Yeah, well, so back then, I remember the video was filmed at the time my father's studio in Annandale,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the school eventually that Jeff Smith took over. Um, but I remember sitting on a milk crate, and saying the line maybe 4 or 5 times with my sister, and then going home and getting ice cream, and not realizing that it was going to be a commercial. So when you and I were kids, after school you go home and watch Channel 5 and Channel 20
Yeah,
and all
that's
the
right.
cartoons, Kimba the White Lion and Ultraman.
Ah, man, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
And then who else was it? Johnny Sacco and so well,
Speed
anyway,
Racer,
so
Speed Racer. Don't forget Speed
Speed Racer.
Racer.
Oh, that's right. Speed Racer. You got to remember Speed Racer, Racer X. But so the commercial would pop up in between the cartoons,
Yeah.
So I'm sitting, on my chair, my mom has, an orange juice, and I'm like looking at myself. I'm like, oh, that's cool, So you kind of, as a kid, when you're 6, 7 years old, you don't realize, the impact.
Yeah.
So that commercial ran for 20, up until I was in college.
Wow.
So a long time. But I think maybe 10 years ago, WTOP or somebody did the top 50 commercials
Right.
in the area, and they ranked us 50. I don't like what 50. How are we not in the top 5? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even today when my wife, she always talks about the story where her dad wanted to put her in ballet, and she said she would always fight it. I don't want to do no ballet. I want to be like nobody's bothers me. And you got to hear this story, man. She said that commercial forever. She just wanted to do martial arts, and she made a bet with her dad. Well, if you let me do martial arts, I'll do ballet. So that commercial got her in martial arts.
Oh, that's awesome.
So many people, man.
That's all. Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely had an impact. Obviously it helped my dad's business.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it also kind of introduced, I think, kids to the martial arts.
Yeah.
That kids can do it. Because back then, in the 70s and 80s, it was pretty rough. Before my dad invented the safety gear. So as a parent, you didn't want your kid to be, bloodied up after class.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of softened the image of our industry. So it was pretty genius of my dad. He actually was going to be the one to say the line, and my sister and I just happened. So the plan wasn't for us to do it. We just happened to be with him, and his friend who videoed it said, let's see if your kids do it, and it was just a random thought. So it wasn't planned.
And that's awesome. I mean, you just brought out 3 important points. One is that many people don't realize that success, especially when it comes to entertainment, is like the most unexpected thing happening. Like, hey, let's try this. And then that works better than what was like scripted out, man.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So if, with my dad, and, when you think about what he would like, all the things that he invented, like, the safety gear, particularly,
right.
He would spend, hours in our garage at the time, cutting foam, just thinking different ideas.
Mm-hmm.
If you can imagine, this is before the safety gear was an item. He would drive in his car with this prototype safety gear on his head, driving. He'd get speeding tickets. He'd get, the police would stop him with this headgear on. They're like, "What are you wearing?" And he's, so he would, of course, he'd say, "Oh, I'm Chun, and they would let him go.
Right.
But he always tried different things. He was like, I'm going to try it. That's with music, with martial arts, and all these different things that he did with, and making sure the kids had to be on the honor roll for grades. He just said, he was always thinking. So that's why, as you say, he's a pioneer. He wasn't afraid to try anything. He just said, I'm going to try it. If it fails, it fails. And if it succeeds, then, we got something good.
And that's the warrior. I mean, and there's so many things. And the one thing that I think I want to, the next thing is like business. We understand. And I always tell people, yeah, everybody's a consultant and everybody does this. I mean, you got all these mastermind business people that can tell you how to run a business. But let's just be honest. From what I know as a kid being a part of EFC, it was Grandmaster Chun that put together the first structured business blueprint on running chains of martial arts schools. And then from our area, I guess it was Brian Tracy. Then it was like Kim's Karate. But it all started with Mr. Chun and Mr. Nick Kokinas. Am I correct? And give me a little history on that.
Yeah. So, so as you know, EFC and Mr. Kokinas, he was, I think his industry, he was in the dance or ballet industry, I think dance schools. And I don't know how they met, but he helped my dad kind of solidify the business part of it, running schools, and the EFC, the tuition payments and kind of managing all that. But Nick Kokinas was a genius, and I learned so much from him. He was, God bless him. He would have these special meetings for the small group of Chun instructors and managers. We would go to EFC in Bethesda, and they would make us that lunch. That was like that was awesome. The lunch.
They still do it, man.
I know. And he would, he'd give us a 30-minute meeting. It was short, but it was just so, important, and that really shaped how I developed my business. And I got a lot from my dad too. But I give Mr. Kokinas and Commander Muffley, all those guys there, a lot of credit for how I run my school and just the basics. Everything is basics. There's nothing fancy. I'm sure when you ran your school and when I did mine, you try to think of all these ideas and you just fall back to the basics. Just as long as you're consistent with doing your paperwork and everything else, you should be fine.
And that's so important because in a recent article I was reading with Tony Robbins, and he was saying, let's call this a comeback. He said, in order to recover from COVID-19 and all these things, it's going back to the basics. If you know the basics of business, we got to go back. This is a comeback. It ain't a new beginning. It's a comeback. And for me I think one of the things that me and my wife really understand, and I think we were talking about it right now, it's not about a customer. It's about a relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was before. Even this with me and you, even tournaments, everything we talking about at the end of it, Mr. Kokinas making lunch, it wasn't no business. It was a relationship.
Yeah.
How important is that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially with my customers, you can't see, like a lot of people, I think that they get so caught up with numbers and and it's important, so to me it's developing a relationship with your students, with the parents in your school, the trust factor. I mean, you're teaching these kids martial arts, and truly caring for each individual that comes through your door. One of the things that I learned with you mentioned Tony Robbins, and I think Jay Abraham, you're familiar with that name.
Yes.
Is we're so caught up with, I need to get new students. I don't need to get in, and you're not focusing on the students that you have. You develop those people, and they're going to come back. They're going to keep coming back. So I have kids who started with me when they were 4 or 5, and they're 15, 16. That's 11 years of having a student, and it's important for us, I think, that the relationship with your students is very important. I think that's the biggest part of my success. Right now with COVID, we're not getting a lot of students right now, and as you know that, but I'm maintaining the ones that I have because the trust that we've developed, with them, and you got to pivot, obviously, with the Zoom, and that's a little challenging, but it's worked out so far. And if this lasts till the end of this year, I think I'm going to be okay still. As long as my landlord gives me a break. But I'm able to stick with payroll. We're running the Zoom classes and the partial in studio classes. We can only have 12 kids in our school, right, with the safety policy. In the past, we'd have 25, 30 kids. So we have to limit the students to 1 class a week, and so it's tough, but I think it's not impossible to do.
Yeah, but it's back to old school, right? This how it was back when we first started. It was about relationships.
Yeah.
And really, you couldn't even come into the dojo. I mean, you could correct me. I mean, it was like the only way you could get with the teacher is that somebody had to refer you, and then the teacher got you to come in, and he just checked you out. He went to see, if you was tough enough to really earn that trust and that relationship. And that's what I feel like it is now, because the students that are staying with you, them parents, those students, they trusting that you're gonna uplift their spirit, not yelling
Yeah.
at them and scream at them. And they're
Right.
going to tolerate you being direct if a kid being lazy. I mean, how would you relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's, right now you get to, especially with the limited class sizes that we have now. Yeah, you're now we're really getting to know these kids, as they're coming through the door, and you see that the one time that they come in, you can see that they're excited to come in, because before they were coming 3 times a week, maybe 4. Now they're taking advantage of the one time that they can come in.
Yeah,
So you have to make it special for them.
yeah,
All my instructors, even on Zoom, as they log in, we're greeting them. Hey, what's up, Mike? How was school today? What'd you do today? So you got to develop that relationship where, because the discipline is still there in even our Zoom classes. If a kid's logging in late, he's not coming into class.
yeah,
So you have to maintain that. If a kid's goofing off and eating, their breakfast, hey, put that away. You're taking class. And so I think it's important to maintain the structure so that they understand that it's martial arts. They got to focus. But at the same time, you have to understand it's tough for them too.
right.
So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, you did. That's incredible. I mean, man, you're so humble, and I mean, you just the knowledge and the things that you share. Just when I'm around you, man, even now, I'm trying to hold back my tears because you mean so much in my life, man, and
uh,
your dad means so much in my life. So, you know, uh, one thing I just want to say before I go to the next question, and I know you're used to my emotions, man, but they good emotions. I remember one time your dad said to me, he said, "You make it from ghetto and become good man," and that right there, it meant so much to me, and I will forever remember that because it gave it. You know how we are, like you talking about the students. We don't know when a person needs a little nudge, just one little
yeah.
good thing. I mean,
Oh,
how important is that sort of authenticity and realness as a martial artist in person?
yeah, yeah. I mean, so it's funny when you say that. I can hear my dad saying that to you. But yeah. So the impact that we have with our students, those little nudges, those little hey high fives,
Yeah,
it means a lot, because you got to think when we were kids, so my instructors were John Chung, when I was a really little, Otis Hooper, gosh, I had Andre Yamakawa, Charlie Lee, these are guys that I looked up to, and man, they were tough on me, but when they gave me that one little hey, you did a good job,
yeah,
you know you're on cloud nine.
yes,
um
yes,
so I think it's important to balance. You can't always you know so give them 100%. Hey, you were awesome,
yeah,
because then you get this false you
yeah,
know this but but you have to be, I think, sincere with them, but
mhm,
also you have to share the positive. So yeah, I mean, it's important, I think. So I'm sure that that impact that he had when he said that to you. My dad would, he was never he always said it, as he thought it. He never beat around the bush
yeah,
with thoughts. But yeah, I think it's very important for the people in our position as instructors,
right.
to tell the kids when they're doing it bad, but also to recognize, hey, that was a good effort, because that's what they feed off of.
And even in the state, when we talk about, I mean, when we go to teaching, because when you mentioned Charlie Lee, John Chung, Jeff Smith, man, Master June Reed developed a stable of great martial artists from forms, weapons, and fighting. How, when you look at the state of martial arts, because I think that, how do you maintain that technical correction in the midst of, sometimes people call the kids lazy. I don't think that they lazy. I think they're more intelligent than any other generation before us. We just got
Yeah.
to find a way to connect to them on a different level. I used to think that, but from what I see in COVID, you gotta be really these kids. My little kid can edit on TikTok, man. I don't even know how to do that. He only 7 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but how do we maintain that technical excellence that martial arts truly demands to develop character?
Yeah. These kids are pretty resilient, I guess. You just have to, one of the things that my dad, was that with our system, he demanded perfection. He demand. I mean, he didn't care, if you were overweight. He demanded, well, you have to do it this way.
Right.
So our system, and at the time we're like, gosh, some of these kids have limitations.
Right.
And he said, no, they don't. The limitation is how you teach.
Right.
That's what he would say. It's your fault, not the kid's fault.
Yeah.
So we have, as we have, martial arts. We have a lot of kids who are introduced to our, what we do with, kids who have learning disabilities, or, they're going through physical therapy. So we get a lot of these kids who are, not the athletic, they're not really athletic. Maybe they're just, they're playing too many computers at home, or, computer games, and they're not really physically active. So, but I think if if these kids love what they do, the martial arts, they'll change. I think that's the key. If they love what they're doing, they'll adapt to the requirements that they're required to do. So, so we get kids all the time who come through our doors, and their parents are like, yeah, he's always tripping over his feet. And then they're surprised as they develop through our system, how good they can be.
Right.
I have a kid right now who has Down syndrome. He's a brown belt, and you're like, you're thinking, how far can this kid get to?
Right.
He's doing musical forms, and the timing is great, and he comes to class 2-3 times a week, and he's just doing awesome. And so there's no limitations. I mean,
and so what that right there, you bring up martial ballet. Martial ballet. Your dad innovated the whole musical kata element.
Yeah.
What was that like, man?
Can you imagine hearing Exodus every day for 10 years in your life? Yeah, he would. So that was the first form he created.
Right.
And it was interesting. I think, of course I'm a kid still, so I'm learning the form, and but yeah, that was a big deal. I think, the first, martial ballet, and I think it put martial arts as a performance on the map. People would actually, the demonstrations my dad would do with Jeff Smith and Charlie Lee and John Chung, doing Exodus. It really opened the eye, a lot of people's eyes with what it's about, the art of martial arts, not just the the fighting part of it.
Right.
So that was
No, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
Well, that was a big part of my dad's. He wanted everybody to see the art. This is actually very graceful. It's not about beating people up. Of course, the safety gear, brought the safety aspect of it, and so yeah, that was a big deal.
But that and the art, when you sit back and you see now when you see the Carmichael Simons, the Arnold Chungs, the John Valera, and now these guys in Hollywood doing all these. Hakeem Austin. Oh man, we look at this, man. You can go all especially. I ain't bragging. DMV, man. We got some greatness here, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was pretty. It was So when I was a kid, I was taking martial arts. My sport was actually soccer. that was my passion.
Okay.
So I would still go to the tournaments and watch all you guys compete, and yeah, it was amazing, this area, and especially the Chun Rhee, the team of people at Chun Rhee. When you have people like Charlie Lee and John Chung at the same school,
Right.
teaching you to be a black belt, that's pretty impressive. So
We're
Helen definitely fortunate.
Helen.
Helen. Yeah, she, she's older than me. So as when we were kids, I'm like, gosh, I don't want to spar Helen because she's gonna kick my butt. Yeah, she was awesome too.
Yeah, man, just that evolution, and now we see how Arnold Chung, and I mean, Carmichael and those guys have went on. How does it feel now to see that generation? What you seen John Valera, all these guys. I mean, how does it feel to see these guys in movies? You sitting. Do your kids believe? I mean, do your students believe you? And say, "Oh man, I know him. He used to train at the school. We used to be close together." How do they feel when you say things like that?
I guess these kids. I'm not sure if these kids really know the impact that these guys are having now. But yeah, I think it's amazing. Arnold. Yeah, he's so amazing. I think he's just his personality and he just he just goes for it. And of course John and Carmichael and Kofi. Remember Kofi Yadom? Kofi. Yeah. He was actually he actually lived with he was he lived in it was him and Phil Baruti were my housemates in my house. So watching him too, and I think he did stuff with that movie. Black Panther.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's awesome to see these guys succeed, outside the school, and make a living what they're doing.
So when we talk about the art, but I'm sitting back there, I've been waiting because that safety equipment back there behind you.
Yeah. Let me grab one of them. So this is the original, one of the originals. This is the punch that Linda Denley made famous.
Yes, I remember those white ones, man.
It's a soft can koozie. That's what it looked like. But yeah, it's the safety punch. But yeah, it's yeah, it was pretty interesting, watching my dad cut this foam rubber and the factory that he had in DC at the time. But I can't imagine the thought and all that stuff that he did to make it happen, but he just did it.
And that safety equipment changed from your perspective, how do you think it really impacted the safety measures, especially as a martial arts school owner?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's so again, I was a kid at the time, and I think it was Grandmaster Pat Worley who got injured in a tournament, and my dad's like, our guys are after a tournament are going to the hospital, because back then, it was blood and guts sparring, so my dad he always thought outside the box and said, if we're gonna make this something that people develop a sport from it, we got to get kids involved. You're not gonna have a kid go to a school and get beat up like that. So I know there was a lot of resistance at the time. People looking at the safety gear and say, "Oh, you're changing." What do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? You're changing the sport and tradition. Yeah, tradition. And my dad was always, if we're changing tradition, then we're still going to be in a horse and buggy for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
You got to keep thinking beyond that. So, but now people look at it and say, yeah, good thing he did that, because it'd be different now.
It's interesting. I did a interview with Master Billy Blanks the other day, and he was just talking about point MMA, because when you think of the beauty in sparring back then, we could throw great technique. Nobody got hit. You can stop it an inch away from the face. And me and my wife, we was like, man, but really on a combative level, because back then I didn't see tournaments where people did slam people. I didn't see Nasty Anderson pick up a guy at the Diamond Masters and slam him in first punch. So it's nothing new. It's, I always tell people, it's just that when they went to the grappling element, the judges stopped them. But you still, those things were still a part of the sport in the early days.
Yeah.
I said, how do we go back to that? Because I think the kids can become even more versatile. But we say, but without any tap out, a knockout.
Yeah.
And, it goes right back to what your dad and everybody was doing. How do we evolve the art so we can stay competitive? We can keep up, especially with MMA. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It did so much for the martial arts. And we just want to make sure that you don't forget what the sport and the traditional aspect of what we love has contributed to that. Because every great full contact fighter, Joe Louis and all of those guys, they come from the sports karate arena.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? I mean, when you think of that evolution.
Yeah, well, you know, MMA, like you said, is not going anywhere. It's definitely something that people enjoy. I'm a little conflicted with it's pretty violent.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's good for I always tell parents who look into MMA is that it's something good for, I think, as the kids get older. When you're submitting somebody on a choke or something like that, you gotta be at a pain tolerance, I think, that most kids don't have.
Right.
So I think things like what we do, the kung fu, taekwondo, those arts are great induction for kids. And then when they get older, have them do the grappling. I think that they're stronger, they're a little more smarter about it. And in order for any kind of submission, in order for you to understand how it works, you got to be able to tolerate it yourself.
Right.
You got to be so. I think if kids are introduced to MMA too soon, they'll be turned off with martial arts.
And you've seen what we do with point MMA, though. You've seen the safety factors and what we.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. So introducing something like what you guys do, yeah, that definitely should help the kids understand kind of the control.
Right.
Martial arts isn't reckless; it's controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's what one of the MMA pioneers said. He said, we got to keep the traditional aspect, the character development, going.
Mm-hmm.
And in closing, what would you say your defining moment? I mean, you're just, and I say again, as I'm looking at you, thinking of all you could be the most egotistical maniac there is. You could say, my dad created this, my dad did this. Who would doubt you? I mean, I've been around my dad, movie star. What was it? The movie with Angela Mao, where
when Taekwondo
strikes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Tell me about that moment right there.
Well, I mean, I don't. I was. I think my dad. I don't know what year that was. I was probably like 5 or 6. He was gone in China for 3-4 months, and I'm like, where's Dad?
Right.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I mean, as a kid, so my dad had this one of those big cassettes of Enter the Dragon,
right.
And as a kid, I would watch that movie every day. I mean, that was my favorite movie as a kid.
Right.
And then I got my dad's movie. I was like, oh, Dad, this movie's pretty good too.
Right.
Yeah, it was again, I was just a kid. I was clueless.
So now when you think about, what would you say to a kid right now that might not understand the impact of their parents' legacy? And some of those things, I know your dad was probably hard on you and direct. I mean,
oh yeah.
How do you relate to, how do we save a child now to say, look, don't think that they mean, don't disrespect your parents? I mean, how would you relate to that? I don't know if I'm bringing it out correctly.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I think it's tough because when like you said, when we're kids, I think, well, these days I think parents are way too soft, to be honest. I mean, when my dad was, he wanted us to get good grades. You can only watch this much TV.
Yeah.
And as a kid, of course, you hated that because you want to do all the easy stuff. But yeah, I take a lot. My parents were, I definitely appreciate all the stuff that I hated as a kid and what they did with me. So as I told you before, soccer was my passion, but I was getting poor grades. My dad said, "You're not playing soccer for a year. You're gonna have to read these books. You're gonna do your homework. You're gonna stay in your room, and if your grades don't get up, you're gonna you're gonna find out what pain's about." And I'm like, oh. So I was mad, I was sad, but if you didn't do that, I would have been a flunky.
Right.
I was getting going to a private school, getting D's and C's, and that wasn't happening with my dad. So I was fortunate enough to go to William and Mary and go to a good school, and if it wasn't for my parents, getting down on me, I wouldn't have made it there. But I would tell the kid, but the kids are always going to say, yeah, but I want to do this and do that. But I think parents need to be tougher, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
I see too many kids. Um, it's the responsibility of parents to teach their kids. My dad always say, until you're 18, until you're 18, you can do what you want, but when you're living under the roof, you're gonna follow the rules.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, it's yeah, you appreciate your parents. They're not going to be here forever. Both my parents are gone. But the teachings that they taught me, they're with me. They're not going away. I don't have kids, but I think I teach the things that my parents taught me to my students.
Yes.
As you know, your kids are your students are your kids,
Yes.
to some degree. We got 250 students right now who are working hard, and I'm going to teach them like they're my kids. So.
And to uphold that legacy, I mean, how do you? I guess just in closing, how do you stay humble? Brother, Chun, you're the most humble person I know in my life, man. How do you keep grounded?
Yeah, it's not, the only place I'm king is at my school.
Right.
When I come home, it's my wife.
Right. Right.
And I just, again, it was my mom, I think, that taught me the humbleness part of it, is that you appreciate everything. I think if you appreciate everything that you have, you don't really, everything that I have, I see that I've earned it. A lot of people think, oh, you're Junri's son, and you're lucky because you got this. And I think I had an advantage because he was my father, but I had to work for everything that I got.
Right.
When my first school, I took over a school in Annandale. It was a small little school, and we had 50 students. We were barely making rent. And I at the time I had instructor Victor Pastor, and he helped we developed the school, and all of a sudden we had 200 students. But it was a school that I know I worked hard to get there.
Right.
And my school now, when I took over the Falls Church School, that's the Falls Church is the main school. That's where everybody tests for their black belt. And when the time I took it over, it was also not doing well. It had less than 100 students, 50 students who were already paid up for their tuition, and 50 who were paying $40. It was really just, so we developed it to a point where before COVID, I had 6 full-time instructors. I had an after-school program. So unfortunately, all that is down, but we're still able to survive. So it's going back to it. It's appreciating what you have and knowing that it was hard work that got you there, and if you don't pay attention, you can lose it. It's I don't know. I'm not like my father loved being in the limelight, and every moment he had, he would just he'd be in the front of the line. Yeah. I'm not. My personality is more like my mom. I like being behind the scenes.
Right. and for a school owner, because everybody's struggling. Everybody. That's the other thing. When me and you talk, we just so honest about it. But for a school owner out there, everybody believe it is this next fixed thing. Let me pay this amount of money, and this guy gonna help me. Let me pay this amount, or this consultant gonna help me. And Master Brown always said, at the end of the day, take your pen, tap it on the table, and figure out what you got to do to creatively go out there and make it work. Because if you don't do it, it's not going to work. How would you relate to that, Mr. Chun?
Yeah, it's again, it's this like simplicity of what. It's not that when you before when we started Zoom, I was like, well, how do we do this? You're kind of thinking, are these kids are they gonna respond to us? How do we go down from letting the kids only come one class a week and having to cut the class down 30 minutes so they can fit more students in the school? So all that was, that was like, how are we going to do this? But it's working. So it's not, we're not doing anything fancy. Like you said, you're going back to the basics. You're being, we're teaching the classes. We're making it simple for them to follow the things that we need to do on Zoom. And we're understanding that it's hard for them too. So you can't always be so tough with them.
Right.
But the discipline, you have to still maintain discipline. Your kids wear your uniform, come in on time. We're going to say the student creed. We're going to bow out after classes. I don't want to see your dog running around. I don't want to see, you eating a snack. So it's keep maintaining that. You don't have to do anything fancy, and when the kids come to the school, the fun social aspect of martial arts, the kids are losing that. I'm sure, when you guys, we play dodgeball at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You play these games to keep them excited.
Yes.
We can't do that because, we got 30 minutes. We got to go to work.
Right.
But with our students with the instructors, I tell each instructor that the kids have to leave every class better than they were before they came in.
Yes.
Okay, so make sure they go home with something that keeps them excited, that they're progressing.
Mm-hmm.
And a successful school, they have to also understand that the kids, one of the things I learned, I think, was from Mr. Kokinas, was that every school student has an invisible meter above their head, quitting or black belt.
Yes.
Okay, and you know how you used to say you got to grade each student A, B, or C. It's the same thing.
Right.
You got to see each student where they're at, their enthusiasm when they come to class, and determine where they're at in their meter. Are they closer to quitting or they're closer to getting the black belt? Right. And it's not doing anything fancy. It's just teaching them, making sure that they know that they're succeeding.
Okay.
So we're doing the Zoom, we're doing the in-studio classes, but we're not, it's simple, but it's working. So.
And I know that I said that was the last one. You just brought up one other thing. Many people believe that they're setting that goal of black belt. They think it's all about selling the black belt. When your dad and Mr. Kokinas and them set up that whole, I guess we call it affirmation. That's what it is, an affirmation. How important is the meaning behind that goal? What's our goal, black belt, sir? How important is that affirmation and even having that goal for every student?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that we do with our students is that at every belt level, the kids have to write a new goal. They have to write it on pen and paper. It's called the goal setting. Mm-hmm. So if a student tests for orange belt, I want you to write a goal, and it's not just, I want to remember to brush my teeth every morning. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to do that. I want to see something that's going to make you grow. So you have to write the goal down. You have to write when you want to achieve it, and you have to write how you plan on achieving it. Okay, so and it's got to be as specific as possible. It can't be I want to be a millionaire. It's got to be, when I'm 30, I want to make $20,000, mowing lawns. I plan on going to all my neighbors and putting, it's got to be very specific. Right. So, goal setting is that's number one. When you look at all the people who are successful, the common denominators, they set their goals. It's definitely one of those things that when I was younger, I wish I'd known, but it's so, with Tony Robbins and all the stuff that these motivational speakers are doing, it's a basic thing, but write it down, put it on paper. So yeah, when we have in our school, your goal is to be a black belt, you're planting that seed that when you start something, you finish it. Yes, sir. But if you want to achieve any form of greatness, it takes work. It takes work. We're not going to hand it to you. And so the biggest, with most schools that are successful, I think the mission is not the kicking and punching part. It's making these people better people. As we got this, difficult situation with the politics and character and leadership. And I wrote a post on my Facebook page about, my father would say, this is why character is so important, especially in leadership. Knowledge, honesty, and strength, true confidence through those three areas. And if any of those areas are missing, if you're dishonest, if you're weak, if you're not smart, then you don't have, and you're in a position of leadership, that's dangerous, So, we have a responsibility as martial artists, especially with our kids, to develop these kids, to develop all these things. We check report cards. They have to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, organization, come into class. All these habits that you're developing, it's more to develop them as to be better human beings, and not so much. And I'm not looking to create a, MMA champion 20 years down the road. If that's what they want to do, great. But it's more about carrying on the traditions that we teach as they're training the black belt, to the other areas of their life to become better people. And that's the number one thing. And if that's how your school is kind of focused, you're going to be successful. I mean, what parent doesn't want that for their kids?
Yes.
You know, martial arts is just a tool to get them to that level, I think. So when you have kids that come back to you and, you know, they're like, oh yeah, you know, Master Johnson, you know, I just came out of Harvard. And like, what? You know, and you hear all these things like, you know, and to agree, you say, you know, that I think maybe I had something to do with that.
Yes.
So I have all, you know, it's funny because you have these kids who are adults now. You always think they're always going to be kids, but
right.
you know, that's the joy that I get. That's the joy that when I see my students who are now adults succeeding.
Right.
So that's you know why we do it.
Do you remember the man in the mirror?
My dad's poem. Yeah.
Do you remember it?
I don't think I can. He made me memorize that, gosh, but I think I may have forgotten the man in the mirror. But he loved that poem.
Master Brown remembers that thing. He can say it just like he'll say, "Let me tell you about the man in the mirror."
Yeah,
he remembers it, man. Oh man! And in closing, are you gonna go fishing today?
You know what? I thought about it. The weather's supposed to be nice. You know, that's one of my passions. Is you know, I as a kid, I wanted to be a bass fisherman. You know, that was one of my things I wanted to do. So, so now, you know, kind of revealing my hobbies, but kayak fishing is a big thing. And, you know, I want to, you know, so I fish these tournaments, kayak fishing tournaments.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, it's a growing sport, but, yeah, that's my piece. You know, I love being in the water and just being out there. You know, I catch and release. It's called catch and release. So I don't kill these fish. So those of you who are PETA supporters, I'm not going to disrupt them. But, anyway, that's what I enjoy doing.
You know, it's funny because my dad, we used to go fishing. Even though we lived in the inner city, that was my greatest thing I used to do with my dad. But I never got a chance to get like you know, I used to watch him take them rods and throw them things up there. He had like 3 of them, you know, boots going in the water. And I had the little fishing pole, man, with the little ball that sank down. Oh, man, I used to be, when I got older, I like, man, how come I ain't never earned the cool rods and reels, man?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yes. Well, I thank you, man. You're my hero. You're my brother. I love you with all my heart and soul. And thank you for letting me get you up Sunday morning.
Oh, no, man. Anything for you, Bam. You know, and God bless you too. I mean, you're a big part of the industry and what you do. I mean, your energy levels it's like my dad's, I'm telling you. And God bless Kimber and your kids. You know, I know Kimber's going through a tough time. Please tell her we love her.
Yes,
we're praying for her every day. And, you know, you're doing the right thing. So keep it up.
Well, thank you. Be blessed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Right,
thank you for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.